Following the coup of 18 Brumaire, Napoleon consolidated power around himself as much as he possibly could. He soon found himself entrenched in more war, however. He attempted to quell the Haitian Revolution by sending General Charles Leclerc. This expedition was ultimately unsuccessful, and Haiti would go on to achieve independence. Nearer to home, however, Napoleon was still entrenched in the War of the Second Coalition. In a campaign against the Austrians, Napoleon led his army across the Alps through the Great St. Bernard Pass, a march that would be commemorated by Jacques-Louis David's famous painting. He fought several battles in northern Italy, including one of his most famous, the Battle of Marengo. He won in part due to the daring of one of his commanders, General Desaix, who had fought valiantly, and some historians argue that he saved the battle for the French, giving his life to do so. The war ended with treaties between France and many of the other European powers, including Russia and the Holy Roman Empire. The British continued to fight the French on the ocean. During the Consulate, several major changes were instated. The Consulate very quickly re-established religion in France. The previous revolutionary governments had attempted to banish the Catholic Church from France. Napoleon did not believe this to be a wise decision, and reinstated the Church, because he felt it could serve him well. His concordat with Pope Pius VII also required Church officials to relinquish the land that the revolutionaries had already taken, and for priests to take oaths of allegiance to France. Near the end of the Consulate, Napoleon established the Code Civil, more widely known as the Napoleonic Code. It is still used in France today, and was viewed by Napoleon as one of his greatest accomplishments. According to many of his contemporaries, Napoleon believed that he was the rightful heir to the throne of Charlemagne, the famed founder of the Holy Roman Empire, who had been crowned on Christmas Day in the year 800 by Pope Leo III. The Senate also believed that Napoleon was the only man who could lead France effectively, and considered giving him a lifetime appointment as consul. The Constitution was rewritten to serve this purpose. However, in May of 1804, the Senate decided that this was not enough, and Napoleon agreed, and he was promoted to a new position. The Corsican general had now been named the Emperor of France. This elevation was a very positive development in Napoleon's mind, but he felt that he needed something more. He had brought back the Catholic Church to France, and wanted Pope Pius VII to grant him the legitimacy of a papal coronation. This was in keeping with his view of himself as Charlemagne's heir. Whereas Charlemagne had been crowned Emperor of the Romans at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Napoleon would now be crowned Emperor of the French at Notre Dame in Paris. Before doing this, however, Pope Pius required that Napoleon marry his wife in the church. Napoleon had married Josephine de Beauharnais in a civil ceremony in 1796, but the Pope wanted it to be made official in the eyes of the Church. A private wedding was conducted, and Napoleon was now ready to be crowned emperor. The ceremony was long, and many people left before it was over. At its climax, Napoleon took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. The Pope then left before Napoleon swore his civil oath, because the civil oath included several items that the Pope opposed. Napoleon was now an emperor, but there was still war to come. In 1805, the War of the Third Coalition would begin. In October of 1805, Napoleon sent a large fleet from southern France around Spain to prepare for his planned invasion of Britain. This fleet was met by Admiral Horatio Nelson, and the subsequent battle would be disastrous for the French. The Battle of Trafalgar would result in the complete destruction of the French fleet, and the invasion of Britain would be prevented at the cost of Admiral Nelson's life. At the same time, in Germany, Napoleon turned to fight the Russians and the Holy Roman Empire. In 1805, he won the Battle of Ulm and followed it up less than 2 months later. On the anniversary of his coronation, December 2nd, Napoleon won a major victory over the Allied forces at Austerlitz. By the time the war ended, the Holy Roman Empire, which had reigned for over 1,000 years, had been dissolved. Napoleon would go on to fight several more wars in Europe, but the most consequential would be the invasion of Russia. The French and Russians had been allied for several years following the Treaty of Tilsit, but the Russians had not held to Napoleon's continental system, which had been intended to economically blockade the British. Tsar Alexander I felt that it was damaging to the Russian economy and had ended it. Tensions quickly rose between the Tsar and the Emperor, and finally came to a head when the Tsar demanded that Napoleon remove his troops from areas near the Russian Empire. Napoleon refused, and the two global powers went to war.
Soudainement s'avance, tirant des sondés au cercueil. La République nous appelle, sachons vaincre ou sachons périr.